Hey guys, what's up? It's Hope, and today is Tuesday, May 2nd, 2017, and I'm here to give you an update on how surgery went last week. If you haven't been following along for the last couple of months, my husband and I are getting ready to start our first IVF cycle. We've done a lot of things to prepare to do IVF. And so we were very, very excited to go last month and to start treatment. On cycle day one in March, they found a 12 centimeter cyst on my right ovary, and surgery was scheduled soon after that to have that cyst removed. And so I have just been getting ready over the last few weeks, doing blood work and CT scans and all kinds of things preparing for surgery. And so my last video that I posted was on surgery day, and so it's been a little while since I posted that video, so I wanted to make sure and give you all an update on how everything went. I'm a little groggy, so I'm just going to try and kind of piece it all together for you. I am home, thankfully, but surgery did not go according to plan, unfortunately. But there are a lot of silver linings, and that's what I'm trying to focus on at this point. I went to the hospital. I was on my way to the hospital, or on the way to get my vehicle, I guess, on Friday when I made that post or that video. And then we went to the hospital. The hospital was actually about 2 hours away. I know I said in my video it was only like an hour and a half, but it ended up being about 2 hours away. And as soon as I got there, they did all of my check-in, blood work, and vitals, and weigh-in, and all those different things. And then they got me up to the surgery floor pretty quickly. I probably got to my little triage area before surgery, probably around noon. And then I just had to wait for about an hour and a half for surgery to start. My surgery was scheduled for 1:30 on Friday, April 28th. And so I just had to wait a little while. My husband came with me and my sister met us there. And so we just had to wait for surgery. The experience before surgery was incredible. All of the nurses I had, all of the staff, I was really, really pleased with everything. As you all know, if you've been following for a little while, I have severe hospital anxiety due to just a really tragic experience I had in the past. And so I always get really super nervous when I have to go in to do anything at the hospital, that my anxiety is going to kind of take over and get the best of me. But I really wasn't nervous, which really kind of surprised me. I was just ready to get it over with, and I think I even mentioned that on my video on Friday, that I was just so ready to get this over with and just to get it out, whatever it was. And so we waited for about an hour before the anesthesiologist came into our room to kind of explain how surgery was going to take place, and just anesthesia, like the anesthesia part of everything, and then also just about in general how they do these types of surgeries to remove cysts from ovaries. And so what I thought was really interesting is that they explained that during surgery I would actually be like this. So my feet would be up here and my head would be down here. So I would literally be laying like this the entire time. My legs would be in stirrups and my head would be, and it's kind of, she explained it to say that it's to allow gravity to kind of bring all of my organs like towards my chest, and so they can get in there and get a good picture of what everything looked like. And so it was just really interesting for her to explain that. And then she said, when I woke up, my face would probably be really puffy and my shoulders, just because of how I was laid like this for so long. Surgery was probably going to take about an hour, and then I would go into recovery, and then I would be able to see my family after that. So I was only going to be back there probably about 2 or 3 hours, just like to get me into the OR, get the robot and everything set up, because they were planning to do everything laparoscopically. And so get everything set up for surgery, and then do surgery, and then for me to get in recovery. So it would probably be about 2.5, 3 hours for me to be back there. And so my specialist came in, who was the one operating, to kind of check in with me, and I didn't really have any questions, just was ready to get it over with. And so they wheeled me back probably around 1:15, 1:20, and then I remember getting into the OR, scooting over to the bed, they were going to do surgery on. And then I remember waking up in recovery. Thank God I don't have any crazy experiences of being conscious of what happened during surgery. And so I remember waking up in recovery and automatically looking at the clock, which was kind of on the wall next to me, and it was 5 o'clock. And I was like, why is it so late? It was the first thing that came to my mind. Why is it so late? Because surgery was only going to take about an hour. And so I looked up, and the nurse was in my area, and she was trying to get me to wake up. And I don't typically have any issues waking up after surgery. So I remember coming to, I wasn't really in any pain, thank God. Like, I just remember looking at the clock thinking, why is it so late? And she said, we're trying to get you woke up so we can get you to your room. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, where's my husband? Like, what do you mean? No, like, I'm not supposed to stay the night. And she was like, oh yes, you're definitely staying the night. And I immediately thought, oh gosh, like, what happened? Why am I having to stay a night? That was never a part of the plan. And so I asked her a couple of questions, and she didn't really have a whole lot of answers because she was just trying to focus on waking me up. And she knew, obviously, whatever she told me, I probably wasn't going to remember later anyway. And so we talked about that. She kind of talked about what would happen next. Like, hopefully she was going to get me a room. She would wheel me into to my room, and that's where I would see my family. And so that took a little while. I didn't probably get to my room till around 7:15, 7:30. And then I remember being wheeled into the room, and my husband was there, and I was so excited to see him, and I was just kind of in and out. And they got me into the room, and I was just laying there, and he said, well, did they tell you what happened? And I said, well, no, I asked some questions, but she didn't really have a whole lot of answers. And I'd asked at one point, did they have to take my ovary? And she said no. And I was like, oh, thank God, you know. And then she said, you're having to stay overnight because you have an incision. And I was thinking, well, yeah, I knew I would have several incisions because they were doing a laparoscopy. So I don't know. I was just kind of confused by her answers. And so when they got me into the room, my husband immediately asked, you know, do you know what happened? And I said, well, no. And he said, I kind of get emotional talking about it. He said there were complications during surgery, and I said, well, she had said that, but what does that mean? And he said, they ended up having to take your ovary. And I said, what? Like, what do you mean? Because I'd even talked to my surgeon or my specialist about that during pre-op, and she had said that was worst case scenario. She was hoping to be able to get the cyst out whole and not to have to cut into my ovary, but we had that conversation that if she couldn't, then I was perfectly okay with her doing what she needed to do, that I completely trusted her to do that. And my husband said, yeah, there were complications and she had to take your ovary. And I was like, why? And he said this, our specialist explained it, that the cyst had completely encapsulated my ovary and would just completely taken charge of everything on that right side. And so I lost my fallopian tube as well as my ovary and anything really on that side, because the ovary was just the cyst was just so aggressive. And so she was able to dissect it. It ended up being a dermoid cyst, and she was able to dissect it, and they sent everything off for biopsy just in case. Typically, dermoid cysts are not cancerous, but she likes to be really precautious, and so she sent that off. And she also removed a polyp from my cervix that she said didn't appear to be cancerous, but like I said, as a precautionary measure, she sent that off as well. She said it just kind of looked like a fold in the cervix that had probably always been there, but it wasn't smooth, and she didn't want anything that didn't look normal to stay. And so she ended up removing that, and then just anything that the cyst touched, she said pretty much was no longer functioning. And so she removed all of that. And so that was just a lot to take in. He said that they tried to do it laparoscopically, and so I have 4 incisions from them trying to do it that way, but because of how big the cyst was, there was no way they could get to it all, and so they ended up having to do a 7-inch incision. It's basically a C-section incision in my along my pubic bone, to remove the cyst. And so I have all of the laparoscopic incisions, 4 of them total, 3 around my stomach and then 1 in my belly button. And then I have the really big incision in my lower abdomen. And so all of that was a lot to take in, obviously. I've been really emotional about it. I've just cried and cried and cried. I just hoped that everything would go according to plan, and it didn't. But I'm so grateful that she was able to remove all of the cysts. She left nothing left. She was able to get all of it, and she was able to confirm that my uterus looks remarkable. There are no issues there, and she said my left ovary looked perfect. It was not cystic. She has no concerns whatsoever about us moving forward with IVF. She said now because I have the incision and it was a more invasive surgery now, she did say we were probably going to have to push it back the total 8 weeks, which is fine. Like, I know I need to heal up, and I want to be feeling 100% before we move forward with treatment. But she said just silver linings that, the left fallopian tube and the left ovary and the cervix all looked, and the uterus, everything looked great. And she was just grateful that she was able to get it all out. She did say that she couldn't remember the last time she had to make an incision like this to remove a cyst, that it was just really rare, and that's why she didn't believe it to be an issue when we talked before surgery. But she was grateful that everything went okay and that I was out of surgery and we would be able to move forward with no issues, and she didn't feel like we would have any complications. So like I've said before, that's what I love so much about her. She never second guesses one time that this is not going to happen for us. She believes in us and our dream, and I'm just so grateful for that. So what was supposed to turn into an hour-long surgery, I ended up being back there, Andy said at least 3 or 4 hours. I went back to surgery at I went back at like 1:15, 1:30, and I didn't get back to recovery till about 5, or that's when I looked up anyway. And so probably about 3 hours I was back there for them to complete the surgery. And then I ended up I was supposed to stay for, as long, I was supposed to be in and out of surgery and then be home that Friday, but I ended up staying all weekend. They had some issues regulating my blood pressure, and then just some pain control. It was really hard. I'm having a lot of pain in my lower stomach, obviously, because that's where the incision is, but the pain is on the inside. It's not at the incision site. All of my incisions look great. So I'm not really worried about infection too much. I'd gotten all my prescriptions filled prior to surgery, so I had all of that waiting for me when I got home on Sunday night. The ride home was definitely a long one. It was, like I said, it took 2 hours to get to the hospital, so I could not wait to get home. And so now I'm just trying to just get my strength built back up. I just got a shower, and that just felt incredible. And so recovery is going to be a lot longer than I thought as well. Obviously, now that I have all of these incisions, and what was supposed to be like a 3 to 4 days recovery is probably not going to be weeks. And so I'm trying to prepare for that mentally as well as with work. And I think the number one priority right now is just taking care of me and my health and my body, and just trying to do the best that I can to just get healed up. I've had a really hard time eating. When I got out of surgery, they had me on clear liquids, so I was over 24 hours without eating by the time it was said and done. And on Saturday, when I was finally able to eat, my sleeve was very, very angry, and so everything I put in my mouth just kind of turned to sand, and I just could not swallow it. And so that was another reason why I had to stay so long in the hospital. And so thankfully I'm doing a little better with my eating. I still don't really have a whole lot of appetite, but I'm just trying to do my best getting food in. So I just wanted to hop on real quick and give you all an update. I know that I had several people asking and wanting to see how I was doing. So thank you so much for all of your prayers. I am going to be spending a lot of time in this big comfy chair, just trying to get healed up and just trying to take care of me. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them down below, and I will see you guys again in my next video. Thank you so much for your prayers. Bye.